Open Virtual Switch VXLAN example. This example sets up a pair of virtual machines and an OVS switch on separate Mininet VMs using script files, i.e. VXExample1.py. It then establishes tunnels using VXLAN and then sets up flows to direct traffic locally or down the tunnel to the remote terminals. The IP addresses of the endpoints for blue and red overlap, as do their MAC addresses. Here's an example. It's VXExample1.py, so this will be operating on the first Mininet machine, and we can see the IP address and the MAC addresses do in fact overlap for red one and blue one. There will be a corresponding set for the second server, the second Mininet server. So we'll start the Mininet server starting with server 1 using sudo python VXExample1.py, and we'll do pretty much the same on server 2, but except of course it's example 2 at that end. That establishes an OVS switch and 2 virtual machines. We need to build the tunnels between those two, which we'll do using OVS VSKettle add port for both ends, making sure we point those tunnels to the corresponding IP addresses at each end. We'll add the flows. This is using a flows1.txt at switch 1 and a flows2.txt at switch 2. Here's an example of what those flows will actually look like on server 1. So we can see the MAC addresses are referred to here, either going locally or pointing down through the tunnel. And we can see pretty much exactly the same thing happening at the other end on server 2. A few test commands that we can use to prove that everything's sort of up and running, such as the ping commands. But remember, we're pinging from the hosts blue or red, and that's 1 or 2, depending upon where we're on the left-hand server or the right-hand. Now I've established all this in GNS3, so we've got a router between 2 VMs running Mininet. So let's log on to the first of those. So Mininet number 1, that's Mininet as the username and password, sort of normal stuff, and ifconfig to check the IP address. There it is, 192.168.10.1, so this end of the connection. The other end of the connection is 192.168.20.1, so ping that just to prove that that's all working. And indeed it is. So we have routability between the 2 VMs. So it's really time to get things sort of started here. So we need to get this up and running. So the first thing we're going to do is move from the home directory into Mininet examples. And then we're going to use Python. So we're going to use Python to start VXExample1.python. And away it goes. That starts up. We can see the IP addresses of the red one and blue one, together with their MAC addresses being the same. Remember, the separation will be the tunnel. So quick couple of commands, nodes and dump. And we can see pretty much the same sort of stuff within the Mininet environment. So I'll go across to the other machine. Again, move into the correct directory, away from home into Mininet examples. Start this time VXExample2.python.py. And that starts up pretty much the same thing. Again, we can see here 2 IP addresses and 2 MAC addresses, which are the same this time, but of course they are different to the other end. Next, we're running in shell, so OVS VSKettle add port on switch 1, VTEP. Set the interface, VTEP, and we need to set the type as VXLAN. A couple of options. So option, typing off the screen there, remote IP. Set that of course to the other end, which is 20.1. And now we'll set the option for the key flow, and this is quite important. The OF port request is to set this value, because we'll devil's own job trying to find it. So set that to 10. Okay, so we've set the tunnel up at this end. Let's go and do exactly the same at the other end. So shell OVS VSKettle add port. It's VTEP as we go through on switch 2. Okay, same sort of thing. Make sure you get it in there correctly, the interface. And the type is VXLAN. And then the options are in there as well, remote IP. This is always a devil's own game, getting this all right. Now, option the key equals the flow again. And again, importantly, setting this value to make it 10. Right, is that right? Oh no, there's something wrong there. Speller on option. You see, this is the devil's own game. So go back to, get rid of that R, put a T in. Always worth checking, of course. Make sure you get the right outputs on each of these commands. So that seems good and dandy. Yep, we've set those tunnels up in the sense. So what we need to do now is OF kettle. So we're going to add the flows. This is onto switch 1 at this end, and it's flows 1.text. Put the dot in, there it is, and we're in. So that should have set the flows up at this end. We'll go and do at the other. We won't be able to ping as yet. Not down the tunnels, we won't. So again, OF kettle. We're adding the flows onto switch 2 this time. And it's flows 2.text. And we're in. So we have our tunnels, we have our flows. Flows should be in place, so there should be connectivity, but let's just back out to shell, OVS, VS kettle, and we'll show. So we can see the interfaces associated with the switch. We can see the VXLAN tunnel in place. Let's DP kettle dump the flows. Whoosh! Oh, there we go. And if we were to go back and research, we'd actually see that those flows match the text files we showed earlier on. Okay, let's try and do some pinging then. Let's ping. We'll put a count in -C2, so that's 2 pings to 10.0.0.1 because we're on blue 2 here, so we're pinging actually to blue 1. That was successful. 2 transmitted, 2 received. Let's do the same with red 2. We're pinging to the same address. Now, he's always the contention: is are we pinging to 10.0.0.1 on red 1, or are we doing it on blue 1? So we'll go down to red 1 on the first server, and we're actually going to turn that interface down using ifconfig. So that's down. So if we go and repeat the command from red 2 and try and ping its 10.0.0.1, it fails. Naught received, because we turned it down, of course. So that's pretty much as expected. Okay, if we bring the port back up and we repeat the test, it succeeds. So that proves that it was actually that device, red 1, that was responding or not. Again, if we turn it down and we go back, again, it's not going to work. So repeating that test, really reinforcing the fact that that is the behavior, the cause and effect that we'd expect. It took a little bit longer to come back. Right, what about Bluetooth? Bluetooth, can that see 10.0.0.1? Yes, of course it can, because its interface is actually up and running on our server number 1. Okay. So return the interface. In terms of what does it look at? Looking at it first, we can see that it's down. Put it back up. Check it again, and it's up with this IP address. Okay, so all is dandy. It's always remembering, if you sort of precursor the command with the actual host that you're trying to use, then you can use those sort of commands such as ifconfig. And there we are. And that's the end of the OVS example using VXLAN.